Welcome back to Variant Quran. I'm Dr. Daniel Brubaker. Well, in this video, we're going to look at a page of an early Quran manuscript that resides in the British Library in London. There are many pages in this manuscript, and we're not going to look at all those pages today, but I want to give you a sampling of what's there. And at the end of this video, I have a few further remarks about the interaction that I had with Yasir Qadi. All right, well, the manuscript that we're looking at today is called 2165, and it is a Hijazi manuscript. It's a vertical format, meaning the page is an upright page. It's taller than it is wide. In fact, like many books that we have today, the Quran, the format of the Quran as a book, the standard format of Qurans, went through a progression, and this is one of the factors that we consider when we're dating manuscripts, along with script styles, radiocarbon dating when it's available, and other features. And so the format of the page began in the 7th century generally as a vertical format, taller than it was wide, and it went to a more horizontal format, in other words, wider than it is longer. There are other features of the book that were common, and there are other features of the way that the pages were written regarding margin and ruling and things like that. But the page in general went from vertical format to horizontal format, wider than it is tall, and then back to a vertical format. So what we're looking at today is 2165, which is an early Hijazi. And I'm not going to go into all the features and history of this Quran, but you know the general date. It's going to be mid-7th century, mid to late 7th century. It is written with some diacritics, as many of the Hijazi manuscripts are written. We're going to talk about other features of the page as we look at this. Now, this manuscript, I have looked at all of its pages in person at the British Library a number of years ago. And it has also been published in a series of very expensive facsimile editions several years back, which I did not procure because of the prohibitive cost, and I don't know if those are even available. It is in multiple volumes. But recently it became available through Irsika in Istanbul, and I showed it to you previously when I acquired it a number of months ago when it came in the mail, and it's this one right here. It's in the British Library, London, there. So that's the Arabic side, and there's that side. It has a Turkish introduction in the edition that I have on the one end, and an Arabic introduction on the other end of it. So, be that as it is. Let's go ahead and jump right in. We're going to spend some time looking at the page, and that's all I'm really going to do today, is walk you through the page. Okay, so here's the page. It is page 7 verso of BL 2165. I want to review with you a few features of the page before we look at specifics. It is, as you can see, a vertical format page, and this is typical of the earlier Hijazi pages, Hijazi manuscript pages. This page has 25 lines on it, which is a little bit on the high side for pages on this format of manuscript, but this page contains a surah transition, and it is the transition between Surah 7 and Surah 8. You can see there at the bottom of the page, I've listed the starting and ending verses of the page and what it contains. It's the transition between Surah Al-Araf and Al-Anfal. You can see that there is a surah heading at the beginning, at the transition there, and it says, the text of the transition is translated there. I translated it for you. It's written in red ink, as is also common in these manuscripts. This manuscript has other features about it. The margins are very minimal, if existent at all, and so also typical of these Hijazi manuscripts is that maximal use of the available space on the page, writing right to the edge. And there are other features about it as well, but we'll talk about a couple more of those in a moment. All right, so let's get into some specifics here. So it's right here toward the middle of the page. There's been an erasure overwritten, and the text that has been written over the top of the erasure is an aleph. It is the initial aleph of innama. It means only, of the beginning of verse 2 of Surah 8. I think that this was probably written here at first, because I don't see what would have made sense prior to that. It is also a place where there would have been a verse divider, and so you can see what the verse dividers look like in this manuscript down here. And there are no verse dividers here. Now, I assume there might have been beneath the erasure. So what motivated this, I'm not quite sure. but clearly something was erased and something was written over the top, which matches the text as it is today. Here's the next one we're going to look at. It's a little bit further down the page, and it is in verse 6. The erasure exists. It looks like it's an erasure of an aleph, and it would be, it's the beginning of the word ka'annama, which means as though, and the verse itself is arguing with you about the truth after it had become clear, as though they were being driven to death while they were seeing. So if we were to look at this verse as it was apparently first written, it would have also made sense if we read that aleph as an interrogative aleph, which I think is reasonable. And it would have looked something like this. Arguing with you about the truth after it had become clear, was it not as though they were being driven to death while they were seeing? All right, so let's move on to the next one here. And this is up here at the end of chapter 7. This is also an erasure. It looks like an erasure of a small round letter, possibly a wow, but I don't know how that would. I guess it could make sense as a conjunctive wow, as an and. But you can see what is here without loud speech in the morning and the evening, and so it's right after the word al-kaul, where it would be. It looks like the erasure kind of attaches to the lam, but I don't think that would have been the case. Obviously, okay. All right, let's move up just here 2 lines, and this is once again an erasure of an aleph. And the text as it stands without what has been erased does match the rasam that is standard. And you can see it is in the passive is recited. However, if we look at the way that this was first written with the aleph in this manuscript, the verb ikra takes a different form. One of the ways that it could read is, and when I recite the Quran, which is a very interesting formulation. It's certainly not the way that the rasam reads today, but it would make sense in a different way. In other words, the verse would read, when I recite the Quran, listen to it and remain silent so that you may receive compassion, rather than as it is today when the Quran is recited in the passive sense, listen to it and remain silent. So it makes sense. It's interesting that this manuscript was first written that way. I don't know if that was the intended meaning by the person who wrote it down, but that is how it was first written. All right. And here's one last one. So remember your Lord to yourself in humility and in fear. And the word there is tadarru'an. And so what has happened here, it looks like there was an erasure of a wow, probably a wow. That would make the most sense. It's clearly a small round letter. And the wow would make sense here as an and, because there is an and. There is a wow just after this word, and in fear, and it would read sensibly here. So remember your Lord to yourself, and in humility and in fear. Clearly that is not the standard rasam, but that appears to be the way this manuscript was first written. All right, so that's it. Just a quick review of this page. There is some other stuff going on this page, including at the very top line, there appears to be an orthographic matter possibly going on with an aleph that seems to have been dealt with after the production of the page. But my purpose wasn't to give you an exhaustive discussion of this page today, just to give you a typical page. And again, I didn't flip through all the pages of this manuscript and look for one that had a lot of corrections on it. I opened up to it basically at random and chose one as an example to you. So you can see the sort of things that are happening commonly in many pages of these Quran manuscripts, and we will talk about more in coming time. So thank you for taking that walk with me through this page. The only other 2 comments I wanted to make was to follow up on the conversations about my interactions with Yasir Qadhi, and I neglected to mention in enough detail 2 of the other criticisms that he had made. I did mention one of them in the text of the earlier video, and that was the criticism of Rice University. I don't know how much more needs to be said about this. Rice is an excellent school, and yeah, I mean, Rice is considered to be Harvard of the South. It's earned that name. But beyond that, I went to work under David Cook, as we do. When anybody is doing a PhD, you don't necessarily even look out and seek out the department. You seek out the individual that you want to work under. And David Cook is a formidable scholar. He did his own doctorate under Fred Donner at University of Chicago. He has also studied under Patricia Crone, and I don't know what he's worked at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. He knows multiple languages. He's very good with Arabic. In fact, he's translating a very large multi-volume Arabic work right now. I don't know if I can make that knowledge public about what it is that he's doing. I'll leave that to him, but these things to say, I have great respect for him. I had great respect for him when I went there, and that was the reason I went to study at Rice. And so I studied at his feet, as it were. So that's number one. And number two, Yasser Qadi mentioned something about he criticized the studying of 10,000 manuscripts. And if you can find anywhere where I said that I studied 10,000 manuscripts, then I will eat my words, but I have never said that. I have always said, and even in my latest video, I believe, I said that I have looked at 10,000 folios, folia, if you want to be more correct, 10,000 pages of early Quran manuscripts. And it would be ridiculous to say that I had studied 10,000 actual manuscripts. In fact, most of the manuscript pages that I've studied have come from fragments, and I've explained in earlier videos what a fragment is. A fragment is a portion of a manuscript. It can be either a little tiny piece, or it can be multiple pages. It can be 100 pages, as long as it's not the entire book. And so most of what I've worked with have been fragments. I have, in fact, studied hundreds of early Quran manuscripts comprising about 10,000 pages, more than 10,000 pages by this point, and many of those, I would say most of those, in person. And so that, should clear that up. It would be good when people criticize me or others if they would actually take care to read what I actually said, or listen to what I actually said and criticize that, rather than criticizing something that they imagine that I said, or that they carelessly thought that I had said because they didn't actually pay attention. And so this is a basic principle. That's all I'm going to say about that. Thank you very much for watching this video. I do appreciate you. Please like and subscribe, and if you have the ability and inclination, please help support me through the Patreon or other means that are listed in the description box below, as I will also list the link to Irsika if you are interested in knowing about this book. And I thank Irsika for doing their publications. They are useful to myself and others who are doing this kind of work. Thank you very much for being here, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye.